Let's do.
All righty. Good afternoon, Cary. I think we met first time around 2008 in Monterey, California. And when I heard you speak on Oracle performance, I was impressed not only with your knowledge of performance, but your ability to actually deliver the message so the people in the room could understand you.
Thank
We get a couple questions. How did you get interested in Oracle performance? And well, let's go beyond that. Where did you go to school, and how did you get interested in IT?
Well, um, my 4-year degree was a degree in mathematics. It was a double major, math and computer science. I got really lucky. It's a small school called East Central University, and we had a couple professors. A computer science professor at Oklahoma University in Norman was married to a PhD student in math, and since OU has a no incest law, they weren't going to hire the wife to teach mathematics at OU, so they were looking for a place to go live and live, their career. So they came down to this little school that I was at. I was a math major, but this guy, Billy Walker, gave a presentation basically about Unix, which I'd never heard of. And I was so turned on by that. I thought, oh my gosh, I sure hope this guy comes here. And he did. I took pretty much every abstract math class from his wife that she taught, and I took every computer science class that he taught, and ended up with a double major, mathematics and computer science. I was kind of a topology, group theory. The book was called Modern Algebra, but it's not like 3x plus 7y equals 6 type algebra. It was like set theory and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I that up. And at the point that I graduated there, my plan was I was going to go to Colorado University. They have a campus in Colorado Springs where all of the authors that I was kind of enjoying studying were professors at UCCS, University of Colorado Springs. It's a beautiful place, beautiful campus. And so I went there not knowing a soul. I packed up, a friend of mine helped me move, and then the friend flew back to Dallas or back to Oklahoma and left me in Colorado not knowing a soul. And a couple of years later, almost 3 years later, I guess, I had my master's degree. And even before I got my master's degree, I got a part-time job at United Technologies. I was a compiler designer. So I would create a language and then build a compiler for that language. And the languages were special purpose. At United Technologies, it was they fabricated ships. So when the U.S. government sends a satellite into space, they still are operating some of the chips that I helped build. They would have like a 32-bit multiplier chip that had to be radiation hardened because it's flying through Van Allen belts and all this kind of stuff. And my code would take the simulator's output and translate it into the same kind of thing that the actual tester would create as output, and then I would do a diff. And the diff isn't just like a text diff. A diff is like, well, if a 1 appears on this pin within 600 microseconds of this becoming a 1, so there's this fuzziness of time. But they won't always be, 422 microseconds. It might be 580, but that's okay. That's close enough. So I wrote stuff like that. It was fun. It was a blast. And somewhere along the line of getting my master's in computer science, I realized I don't want to get a PhD in computer science. I didn't really like the whole, confinement, I guess, of being in a department where your whole future is dependent upon whether somebody doesn't care if you leave, or if they really think you're great and want you to stay, they'll keep you longer, and just all this weird political confinement type stuff. So I settled on a master's degree. Also, I saw a guy at work that had a PhD, and his projects weren't any more interesting than mine were. So I thought, what's the use?
Right.
It occurred to me that what I'd really like to do someday is make some money, and if I do, I want to not be stupid about what to do with it, and I'd also like to be able to lead teams. So I thought, well, what do you do when you want to learn how to handle money and lead teams? And I thought, well, that's that's probably an MBA right there, is what that is. So I decided to come, and I applied and got accepted at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. So I moved to Dallas in 1988, I think it was. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my MBA in a year. Oh my God,
Okay.
Rob, that's the hardest year I ever spent in my life.
I imagine.
It was like, I think it was 30 hours, 3 snows, something like, I don't know. It was way too many hours per semester, and there was no break because we had
Okay.
to go fall, winter, spring, summer, and then the day we graduated was the day that the new class is coming in for next year. And
Ooh.
it was just brutal. Part of it was because I didn't enjoy the subject matter as much as I was accustomed to enjoying school. Because I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you talk about, compiler design forever, but if you talk to me about accounting, it's hard to stay awake. But
Amen, brother.
but anyway, I enjoyed some of it. The business law stuff was a lot of fun, and I really did enjoy some of it. There was a lady that I was very fond of her teaching. She'd come from NASA, and she taught organizational behavior, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a fun class. She was really sharp, and there are several instructors that are really really cool, really sharp. I learned a lot. Anyway, I ended up with an MBA in 1989, and I'd never heard of Oracle before, but a friend that I graduated with recommended, hey, you should go interview. There's this company called Oracle. It's a really cool database company. I'm like, databases, man, I took a 3-hour database course in school. You'd think with a computer science degree, I'd be all over that, but that just wasn't my really area of interest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but okay, I'll go have a look. And about 5 or 6 of us ended up getting hired. Really good batch of folks. Every one of us did really well in Oracle. Um, but I got sent out by this guy that hired me to do like Oracle FinApps type installs and stuff. I went to all
Okay.
the classes about setting up the general ledger and setting up AP and AR and PA and fixed assets and all this other stuff. And it put me to sleep just like it had, in business school. But the guy that hired me figured out that, well, this computer science guy, it's kind of handy to have around because he can do things like program the control characters into the printers so that,
Mm-hmm.
they'll print line feeds and vertical bars and stuff, when they're supposed to. And this guy, isn't allergic to learning what a rollback segment is and why it's causing people problems and stuff. So I just kind of got a gentle ramp into the database through working on a financial applications installation, upgrade, and tuning team. And performance always appealed to me. One of the things I was responsible for doing when I'd write code, it was a bunch of C code, is I didn't do any I/O really, but
Mm-hmm.
I had to make my stuff fast because it had to keep up with these machines that are like real-time generating data. And so I was always interested in performance, and it turned out that within Oracle, they kind of had a need for that too. Um, it was, oh man, I laughed myself off the chair a couple times because instructors would say things like, oh yeah, no, to make Oracle fast, all you need to do is focus on getting rid of physical I/O because these memory accesses are free. I'm like, really? Free? Huh? I spent the last 4 years of my life doing something that is completely imaginary, taking code that didn't do any I/O and try to make it faster. So anyway, that was kind of my gentle entree into Oracle, and I survived somehow the big layoffs of 90 or 91, whenever that was. Were friends of mine. My boss, in fact, told me, he said, go over that payphone and call your voicemail. I'm like, why do you want me to call my voicemail right now? He says, if it's still turned on, it means you haven't been laid off.
Mm.
Holy crap. Okay. So I went over and, hi, I'm Cary Millsap with Oracle. I'm like, okay, it's me. He goes, cool. You're in then. You're in. Let's keep working.
Okay.
And so kind of shocking, because, life's fragile. That could have been the end of it that
Mm-hmm.
day. It was for several people. Rob, I think I answered your question about 4 times over. Why don't I hesitate? Take a break. See if you have another question you'd like to have a 12,000 word answer to.
Well, I'll tell you what, my next question is, because you're an entrepreneur, your company Method R is celebrating 12 years being in business today.
Well, here's
There's
to
a
that.
lot of people, especially in times now, thinking of starting their own business. And if you were to give them a piece of advice, I know what my advice is: learn not to sleep. What would you tell them?
Yeah, learn not to spend money would be another good one, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Uh,
really.
no, when I started, in the MBA, my focus there was they called it entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
Until one day, some guy that was sitting next to me drew a cartoon of a battleship and he put entrepreneurship on the side of it. And so that word always sounds funny to me. So I think of it as entrepreneurialism. That's even more syllables, so it's good.
Yes.
Entrepreneurial. Um, when I left school, I had made in one particular class. Yes, how about a guy named Jerry White? He was amazing too. But it was a class of pretty much nothing but create a business plan, and it was a
Hmm.
bunch of work in Excel. It was a bunch of work in writing up the story of what you want your company to be, and so I did that and was kind of taught the things that you need an idea, you need a plan, you need a real detailed plan. Um, hey, get me something too if it looks like you're ordering or something there. Get me 10 real quick.
That was Candy checking in on me.
Oh, say hi to Candy for me.
Hi, Candy. I am off work. I'm talking to Cary. She has chores for me to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Well,
Yes.
you're working now. Um, but anyway, I learned that you need an idea, you need a plan, a very detailed plan, and
Hmm.
you need investors, you need customers, and yada yada yada. Now, certain aspects of that I'm really cool with, like the idea generation and the generating a proof of concept that your idea of how to fix a problem is going to work.
Hmm.
Um, what I learned, and I don't want to minimize anything that I learned at SMU, but what I learned in the real world is that well, the old joke, how do you make God laugh?
No, how do you make God laugh?
Make God laugh. Tell him your plans. And
Oh, amen.
that's kind of a good one on a philosophical level, but also on a business level because plans are fantasy.
Hmm.
You make a business plan, you say, oh, we're going to get 32 customers next year at an average, rate of $10,000 per quarter and whatever. That's a fantasy.
Hmm.
Um, Now, the part about I'm going to need to spend this much for the office and I'm going to need to spend that much for this person, I'm going to need, those things are a little less difficult to estimate.
Right.
But a lot of stuff on the revenue side is really hard to estimate.
Hmm.
And so if you'd have asked me this question 10 years ago, I probably would have said, the idea is you need an idea for motivation. But if you're not willing to change your idea, you're probably headed towards the iceberg
Hmm.
because the idea may not be something that somebody wants. You
Right.
may make part of your idea and somebody figures out, oh, this I can do it this other way easier than I can do it your way.
Hmm.
Um, so the idea is good for inspiration, but the idea is probably not going to be the idea in 5 years. Um, I would have told you need a lot of cash. I remember going to my wife after about 9 years at Oracle and saying, when I joined Oracle, I did it to learn how to start a business. And I've started 3 businesses within Oracle.
Hmm.
Um, and I said, do you think now is a good time? Do you think we have enough money? And do you think now is a good time for me to go out and try to do this without a safety net? And I remember what she told me. She said, well, if the amount of money we have right now isn't enough, then I doubt you'll ever be willing to say that you have enough.
Right.
That's a pretty good answer from a wife. It's like, that's
Hmm.
pretty insightful. Like, I don't know if you do or not, but if what you have you don't think's enough, you're probably never going to think you have enough. So she basically was telling me, do it, jump, let's do this thing. Um, and I'll tell you that my biggest weakness is what I would obviously perceive as being the hardest thing for somebody starting a business to do, and that is make sure that the thing that you're passionate about doing actually maps to making revenue. And
Oh,
that is,
yes.
and there are lots of authors that talk about this stuff. There's a cat named Eric Ries who wrote a book called The Lean Startup,
Hmm.
and he advocates doing things like I think that's where the term minimum viable product came from,
Right.
where you build just a little piece of your thing. You don't invest your whole first round of VC money or your whole life savings into it. You just create a piece, but that piece has to be useful, and it
Mm-hmm.
has to be useful enough to somebody that they'd be willing to trade you their hard-earned cash for it. And then you basically you follow the feedback. If somebody's willing to pay for something, then by definition that thing has value. If nobody's willing to pay for something, then you haven't bestowed sufficient value upon that yet that you probably ought to go invest further.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a fine line between, damn it, I know this is the right thing for people to want. I just haven't convinced them of it yet, right? And there's all this gray area about, well, is your thing really the right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or does it just need more persistence? Or is it time to fly off and go visit another flower?
Mm-hmm.
That's tricky. Um, a really tricky thing about being an entrepreneur is you've always got a choice between insourcing and outsourcing. And I mean
Mm-hmm.
that at the very fundamental level. In 2000, well, in 1999, when I co-founded a company, we spent, oh gosh, I think it was a month or more of our top technical guy. You may know Jeff Holt. Jeff's the
Yes, I
co-author
know
of the book
Jeff.
that 2003. We used Jeff Holt, one of the top database guys on the planet, for about a month to try to figure out how to configure Microsoft email. Now,
Oh
this is
my.
1999. You have to create your own email server.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2008, when I started my second business, you write Google a $40 check and you've got email in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that makes sense to outsource. Um, but there are other things like I think it was before you turn the record button on, but we were talking about accounting, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was when I was talking about accounting's something that has to be done. Whether you do it or your wife does it or you hire somebody to do it, you've got to do accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like paying $20,000 or $30,000 for some ancillary function that doesn't directly contribute to my bottom line. So what I've decided to do is become a good enough accountant. I took probably 12 credit hours in various college classes
Mm-hmm.
to know enough about it that I can run QuickBooks, and I know who to call when I run into trouble. I have an
Right.
accountant, but I don't. He's not a full-time guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's legal. You can't be your own. What is the old saying? Somebody who represents himself as a fool for
Client.
counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fool. But there's some things that I have to learn enough about that I don't continually pay a lawyer all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And there are all these things. There's email. There's IT security. There's who's going to upgrade the operating systems on our laptops. There's what calendaring system are we going to use? All this kind of stuff. You kind of have to be a little bit of an expert. And even within my subject matter domain, um, yeah, we're really interested in writing the kernel part of what we do for the thing that profiles trace data and turns it into an HTML document. But we also need a Java front end for this. Well, who's going to
Mm-hmm.
write that? Are we going to write that in, or are we going to do that ourselves? Well, let's learn Java, roll up our sleeves, and it ends up being one of the distinctive things about our software is stuff that we do that some guy in an outsourcing situation would never we'd have never thought to tell him to do that.
Right.
So there are all these things. There are icons in our app. Who's going to make the icons? Who's going to learn Adobe Illustrator? Well, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to be an entrepreneur, I'm convinced that you have to know a little bit about a lot of things. You actually have to know a lot about quite a few things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary. And I'll wrap up by saying the number one thing that an entrepreneur needs is it's what I alluded to when I told you I asked my wife the question. You need a family that believes in you.
Oh yes.
Because and if you come home and the attitude at the dinner table is, are you through with your little fantasy yet? Or are you going to go out and get a real job? You're not going to make it. You can't. Today, but more important than cash is to do.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Because I is going to say believing it.
Enough, man. Personality. The thing that I've been in and look at our system and we expect for cash to tell think our stuff is deficient.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always looking for deficiencies, and it isn't just an outward thing. It's like it's a personality habit thing. I'm always keenly aware of my own deficiencies, and it takes me a lot of like conscious effort to try to keep myself motivated, because a lot of times, man, I'll glide slope into the sewer if I just let my brain go, without stopping the negative internal messages. So it's really cool to not have that come externally as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's why every morning I get up and I spend about an hour thinking about why am I doing what I'm doing. It's like an hour of meditation and prayer, and that way I start my day knowing why I'm doing something, because otherwise I'm in the same boat.
Right. And it seems as if everything we do requires a little bit of magic. To make a sale, you have to go in and you have to suspend people's disbelief about what you're talking about. And you have to get people revved up and charged up, seeing themselves be better because of what you have to offer. And it takes a lot of energy to do that. They made fun of Steve Jobs. What did they call it? Oh God.
Bend reality.
Yeah, it's reality distortion filter, I think, or something like that. Where you spend 20 minutes with Steve Jobs and you can't leave the room not believing in what he's telling you. And that's a special skill, and it's a special skill for it to be true. I've had one of these since the first one. And man, when I first saw him present about it, I'm like, I am not going to put a glass brick into a pocket with a bunch of keys. That is just insanity. And once I got over that, this has fulfilled all the hype that you said. Right. So you've not only got to be the good person to bring your customer to the right mindset, but you've also got to be a person who's good at coming up with the thing that's going to keep them in that mindset instead of making them feel like they've been tricked.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, and this is the hard one. If you were talking to a university student or a high school student and he wanted to follow in your footsteps, the one piece of advice that he must keep at the top of his head through the, to succeed.
Yeah, that's really easy. Can you believe I'd say that? That's really, really easy. Figure out how to be great at the hard things that nobody else wants to do.
Ooh, I love it. Because there's a lot of stuff that people don't want to do.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff that people don't want to do, and go freaking figure it out. I used to tell people, I haven't had to say this in a long time, but when I first joined Oracle, kind of my magic was, this is a Venn diagram now. There are not many people who understand computer science and finance, but you have to in order to make a well-informed business decision about, do I want to buy that sand? Or do I want to spend $30,000 on a consultant to rewrite a piece of SQL? Well, if you know enough about this one to be able to know what the right answer is, but you don't know enough about finance to be able to connect to that CTO or CFO or CEO to convince that person to do the right thing, then you can know the truth all you want. But if you can't compel other people to believe that's the truth, then you haven't closed the deal as a consultant anyway. And so another thing, a place to look for stuff that people aren't good at is in the gaps between things. There's a lot of computer science out there, and there's a lot of finance people out there, but there's not a lot of people that overlap a little bit. And the gaps are fertile soil for stuff that's hard. that nobody
Right.
else is supposed to do. And if you're in college, take the hard classes and take that. Go take your math classes all the way through your differential equations and your group theory and all that stuff. And you're like, well, how in the hell can anybody use group theory in real life? Well, if you ever wrote a compiler, you're going to smell the group theory all over it.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people, now this I know we were talking about before the call, but a lot of people never get deep enough in any subject matter
Mm-hmm.
to really be able to like pass everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that hard to do because there's so many things going on and so many things to learn. And you just need to find something that's going to be valuable for other people. And when you're in school, like, how do I know if I need to go study MongoDB or MemSQL or Oracle or MySQL or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
When you're in school, I think your job is learn how to learn. Take the hardest classes you can, learn how to memorize, learn how procedures work in whatever field you're studying right now.
Mm-hmm.
If you're never going to be a chemist, take chemistry anyway, so you can understand how to learn about chemistry.
Right.
And then when you're out of school, if you've learned how to learn, you're going to be ahead of a lot of other people.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter what you studied in school. When you get out, you're going to be doing stuff that's different than what you saw in school.
Mm-hmm.
So the most important thing that I think you get from school is the meta knowledge of
Mm-hmm.
how to learn things.
Right.
And
Right.
it's because you practiced on English and sociology and criminal justice and chemistry and math and all the things that you can practice learning upon in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get out, I seriously, I mean, I think I live this. Just get hooked in somewhere. It doesn't have to be your dream job. Don't insist that your first job be your dream job. It won't be. And man, when I was at Oracle, I hated the FinApps
Oh, yeah.
because they were awful. And all the senior DBAs at Oracle in the Dallas office, they would stay, they would never be within a 10-foot pole of the finance stuff. They'd always be writing their own apps, where you can make them nice and clean and,
Mm-hmm.
you can put your thumbprint on the design of them. But with the financial applications, there was really not a lot of room to exercise that kind of computer science creativity. It felt like I was out there fixing other people's messes.
Right.
Which is exactly what I was doing. But then I began to realize that even though I kind of hated it at first, I started to really like, I get to go to speak at conferences and stuff because I know things nobody else knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I can not only understand what the product does, but I can understand how customers feel because I visit customers every week. And there are not many people at Oracle who know both. Right? Because if you're in development, you're not at customers every week.
Mm-hmm.
So I could bring a gap, like a tensioner to the gap to pull different people together. And I started to realize that this thing I hated, I really was learning to kind of enjoy.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Cary, I just got the signal that I still have chores to do. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much for your time.
Awesome.
We'll chat with you later. Mahalo, brother.
Mahalo. Hey, thanks for doing this. I think this is going to help a lot of people, your other guests especially.
Especially you. Thanks a lot, Cary.
Thank you. See you.
All right, bye.